Assalamualaikum and a very good day. Thanks for tuning in. Okay, in this video I'd like to share with you the importance of having a good session plan. Okay, a good session plan is basically used in a situation where the trainer needs to do the same type of training over and over again, so as a means to not forget what are the contents, what are the strategy for the training, what are the equipments to prepare, and so on and so forth. That is the main purpose of the session plan. It is also used in a situation where you have a couple of trainers that conducts the same type of training, so as a means to make the training consistent. What you need to have is a session plan, and that session plan becomes a main reference for all the trainers to use, so that they can deliver the lesson, the training itself consistently, and ensure that the quality of the training is not compromised. So once we know or we have established the importance of a session plan, now let's take a look at some of the formats or examples that's available out there. I will put a link in this video to a place where you can download at least two types of session plan. One is the session plan that we use in HRD Corp Train the Trainer, which was established with the written instruction material 2019. So I'll give you that example, and another example is from NCS Train the Trainer. This is a format that is being used for the JPK TTT. Okay, so there's these two types of session plan as a reference that you can use. Basically, which template you use is really up to you. That's your personal preference, but the main idea here is to ensure that the main items are there, especially if you're using the session plan to submit for your HRD Corp Accreditation assessment. Okay, so what are the main important points or content that should be in the session plan? Number one is to establish the learning outcome or learning objective of the training. Okay, the learning outcome or the objective is basically what you aim to achieve at the end of the session. What's the difference between an outcome and an objective is the choice of words. An outcome is basically describing what will happen, whereas an objective is what you aim to do. So there's a slight difference in terms of the English usage. Okay, but mainly what's important is it has to be clear based on the title of the training. It has to reflect what's going to happen at the end of the session. So I have another video. You can scroll and check what makes a good learning outcome or learning objective. There are a few components, but just to give a bit of a recap, make sure it is clear, make sure you have indication of who will do what to what level of quality. Okay, so tendency to use the Bloom's taxonomy for action verbs and whatnot, so that is a little bit more detailed in terms of the objective, but the main point is to have an objective. I would highly recommend to not have more than 3 objectives per session. Number one, it's too much for the participants or the learners to consume. Number two is because it creates this compressed and a situation where the trainer will rush through the delivery. Okay, so make sure it's compact, make sure it's clear, and make sure you don't put in too much or aim too much for the session. Okay, number one is learning outcome. Number two, what's important is what is your flow, what is your structure. Of course, the natural structure would have the opening, the body, and the closing. For the JPK one, you will have typically the 4-step process or 4-step pattern, where you start off with the preparation, presentation, application, and confirmation. So that is your main structure of flow. Now, what you put inside depends on your creativity and what you feel is important and necessary for your training session. Now, what you put in next is the key learning points. Okay, the key learning points is usually I recommend to make sure that your key learning points is synchronized with the title of your slides. Let's say your first slides is what is a session plan. So what is a session plan becomes the key learning point in the first item, the definition of session plan, and so on and so forth, the format, and so on and so forth. So make sure it's synchronized. Okay, now once you have the learning points, then you take a look at a few items. Now depending on the template, some items would have different sequence, but the idea here is when you are going to deliver that learning point, what are the resources that you need? Do you need to have your projector? Do you need to have a whiteboard? Do you need to have handouts, and so on and so forth? So what is the resources or learning materials, training aids that is involved? Make sure you put that in. Then of course the allocation of time. How many minutes are you going to spend on this particular area? So if you're going to talk about the introduction and you have a 1 hour session, what is the fair amount of percentage of time that you're going to use on the introduction? So that comes with a bit of an estimation. Of course, the more frequent you do it, you revise the session plan. And by the way, the session plan totally can be revised, can be improved on, doesn't matter. It's when you do it for the first time, you will need to estimate roughly what is the timing. Okay, so and then of course definitely you will want to put in the methods or training methodologies. What are you going to do for that particular learning point? So this is usually meant to be a statement or an elaboration of how you're going to run that particular segment. Let's say for example, your first learning point is what is a session plan, and you will use a whiteboard where you will draft the template. Okay, so in the methods, this is where you write down something like the trainer will explain what is the session plan and introduce the template. So elaborate a little bit. The idea here is when a person reads the session plan, he or she will know what to do, especially like I mentioned the second case just now, where you have a few trainers that's going to conduct the same training. So they read the session plan, they know what needs to be done. Okay, that's the main idea. So these are your main components of a session plan. Of course, like I said, depends on the template and the purpose of it. Some require a bit more details. Some may just be sufficient enough with the draft of what needs to happen. But the main idea, especially if you're going to submit for HRD Corp accreditation purposes, I would highly recommend to use either the HRD Corp TTT WIM version, or if you're coming in from the exemption side, take a look at the NCS TTT format. That can also be used, but I would highly say that the 4-step pattern or the 4-step process would be more suitable for technical training, because the preparation part is where you will need to set up the items, the equipments, and so on and so forth, whereas the typical opening, body, and closing is more generally used for soft skills. Of course, you can also use it for technical, but technical, by having that preparation component, would trigger you to not forget to talk about the equipments before introducing the steps. Okay, so that's it from me for today, a little bit on the session plan. Hope this helps, and all the best for you guys who are going for the HRD Corp accreditation assessment, and hope you make it. And please make life easy for the assessor so that you can pass with flying colors. So thanks for tuning in. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Stay safe.